Hello, disruptors, and welcome back to another episode of Mindset Mastery Moments, the podcast where we disrupt old thinking, unlock new possibilities. And of course, I am your host, Dr. Alisa, the #1 mindset disruptor. Today, we are diving into deep conversation and what it truly means to heal beyond the surface, beyond the stigma, and to radically reclaim your truth. Our guest is Ms. Karen Goslin. She is no stranger to this work. She is a registered therapist and also the founder of KG and Associates, and an author of a powerful new book that is taking the industry by storm called Yellow Paint: Learning to Live Again. With over 3 decades of experience in trauma-informed therapy, Karen created the KG Accountable Therapy Method, a courageous and compassionate framework that is for healing our emotional pieces while being in a space of truth-telling and rebuilding self-worth after all the burnout and the pain that you or I may have gone through. Yes, I am no stranger to burnout and definitely no stranger to pain. Who is, by the way? Her work is simple, her voice is honest, and her story, well, it's one that invites us all to shift, grow, and come home to ourselves. Yes, you're not lost, you're not broken, you just need to reconnect. Karen, welcome to Mindset Mastery Moments. I am so thrilled to have you with us today.
Thank you so much, Dr. Whyte. What an introduction. It's always interesting when you hear somebody, playing back your biography or how you got to where you did and some of your accomplishments. It's just wonderful to hear. So thank you so much for having me today.
Absolutely. And you know what? We can't do justice to all the work you do in 2 minutes. So we're so absolutely grateful to have you. And we would love for you to tell us in your own words what you do and why you do it.
Sure. So you're right. I am the founder of KG and Associates. It opened its doors in 1998. And over the years, I've really refined the method. And this even became even clearer in the recent book that I wrote. So we ended up, trademarking KG Accountable Therapy. What I know, Dr. Whyte, is that we will get in our way. People come to me because they want change, need change, and then so easily we go back and get in our own way of making that change happen. And so I knew that the therapeutic conversations that I was having with clients wasn't just for the purpose of helping people feel better in the hours following the session, that the therapeutic conversations had to land somewhere. And where they need to land is in knowing specifically what you are doing differently every day to get you one step closer to what you really want differently in your life. So the accountability is for me to the client to ensure that I am being lovingly, respectfully honest with them about how they're getting in their own way and why. And also the client's accountability to themselves about what those daily differences are going to be that are so specific. Because if we don't know what we're doing differently tomorrow morning, the therapeutic conversations will likely just float away. And this is the biggest complaint I get from people who spend years and thousands of dollars seeking for that, change they're looking for. And then they feel demoralized or discouraged that nothing got better.
Wow. So very needed in our climate today across the globe. As a business professional and a coach myself, I can tell you that is so needed. And your method is fantastic. And in all, I've gotten a little bit more exposure, not just getting into yellow paint, but connecting with you on a previous episode that we did not get to publish. Now, I'm just brutally honest, Karen. But this episode, again, I get to dive more into what you do, and we will obviously have you in. But let's start with Yellow Paint Moment. In your book, it was your 7th invitation. What happened the day, and why did a can of paint become a turning point in your own healing?
I know. Thank you for that question. It's a question I often get asked, right? Because it's like you don't really see yellow paint in the title of self-help books, right? But I knew like a long time ago that I wanted it to be called yellow paint because I knew for me that was the moment everything changed. And it's not just about me and my yellow paint, but it's really about inviting everybody to find their own yellow paint. And so the story went something like this. Yes, the book follows my invitations to grow because there's the main premise of the book is that through our painful experiences, we will be, back face to face with some core wound from our childhood, right? Core wounds can exist on developmental stages where we wrestled with trust, control, autonomy, worthiness, and identity to prepare ourselves to have intimacy as adults. So, invitations to grow are based on core wounds where we were unable to achieve fully those developmental stages. And so we keep coming back again and again because situations will continue to reappear in our own life that are somehow symbolic or representative of those struggles. We either, at those moments, will either master that core wound and grow, or we will reinforce the wound. Until we master the wound, we will keep coming back to repetitive, worsening events. So to raise a level of consciousness is to understand the meaning of that pain. So for me, I was wrestling with control and worthiness, imperfections from my own childhood where I had internalized, which is very common, where we internalize inaccurate beliefs. So I kept coming back to this where I was over controlling or acting out from an unworthy place. And as I said, inaccurate beliefs about what I had absorbed growing up. And I kept not figuring it out. It is very challenging to figure out where the invitation to grow is. Why? Because in these painful experiences, we are usually overwhelmed, confused, and, we react again the same way we have in the past. But I always say to my clients, don't worry if you don't get it that time. There will be another opportunity. So my invitations to grow, like everyone else, got repetitively worsening, experiences. On my seventh, after years of being sick, of being burnt out, of losing relationships and pushing people away that I cared about, on the seventh, my ex-husband, I had just gone through a separation several months earlier. My ex-husband showed up to take our daughter to what would have been, our annual camping trip as a family. And it was the first time that they were going without me. And that was particularly painful for me. Being left out was a narrative I was carrying with me. And I remember my daughter was only 3 at the time. She skipped down the driveway. My ex-husband was leaving. It was like a hot, end of June day up here in Toronto. And I just stood on that driveway alone. And honestly, and I talk about this in the first chapter, it's like everything I had done wrong in my entire life landed on me that day. I was alone. I was devastated. I felt completely out of control and, more than anything, completely unworthy. And I didn't feel like I could go on. And, it's almost surprising to me when I describe it now because I'm in such a stronger place. But I do remember at that point, and I think a lot of us will hit those rock bottom moments where everything that has been going wrong keeps getting worse until we do often feel like we can't bear it anymore.
Yes.
So I decided I wasn't able to go on in my life, and I was considering ending my life. I was that
Right.
devastated.
Been there.
And
There.
But I'm also organized. I'm also a very organized person. So even at rock, I went, okay, if I took that step, what would I be leaving behind, even in the week that was following? And I know it sounds kind of weird, but that's what I did. And I went through everything in my calendar, went, okay, that's going to be okay. And that's covered off. But then I looked at what was happening the next day. My parents were showing up to paint a room in my house yellow. I rented out the bottom level of my house to help me stay in the house after my separation. And my tenant that normally would have moved out like June 30th had to move out a couple of days earlier. And my new tenant wasn't moving in until, 3 days later on July 1st. So it was unusual that the rental space was empty. So my dad, trying to help me, like desperately trying to help me through my separation, said, let's freshen up that apartment. And he chose yellow. Honestly, I don't even like yellow. I was running on adrenaline. I didn't even really care about the paint. I'm like, sure, Dad, that's a great idea. But they were coming the next morning.
Yeah.
I couldn't do that to them. But most importantly, it's what I did and what people can do when they hit rock bottom. They want to give up, and then they don't. And they do the deeper work. This was the wake up. And this is what I want for my clients and my readers, to finally wake up to what the universe is trying to tell them through these experiences.
Yes.
So I didn't take that step, obviously. And I was on that same driveway the next morning, welcoming my parents in as they came in with all the paint supplies, and we painted the room. And then what I did next was dive really deep into my own journey to understand why I kept coming back to the same place where I was alone, where I pushed people away, where I controlled things in a way to prove my worthiness, and it wasn't working. Yellow paint became the metaphor in that book about this was my yellow paint. I help you find your yellow paint. And then the book explains the KG accountable therapy method.
Oh my goodness, I love it. 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 Such vulnerability. We're so, again, and that's so many of us are in a space where we do feel stuck at sometimes. And yes, more people than would ever tell us suffer and get to the point where they truly feel like ending it all in one way or the other, right? But again, I love what you said, and you ended that. For those who are listeners and viewers to hear that thing is wrong with you because you get to that end where you feel like giving up one way or the other. You're saying that that is exactly where you need to be. And once you push through, that's where everything opens up, right? Is that what I'm hearing you say?
That's right. This is a common human experience. This
Right.
is not like a one-off, like what's wrong with that person? They keep making the same mistakes. If we are honest with ourselves and we are conscious, we will start to see the common themes that keep popping up in our experiences. Different details, different content, different people, but same theme. And the real work begins when you start to connect the thread between those and connect back to something usually in our growing up years, significant negative experiences where we internalize the inaccurate meanings about ourselves, about others, about life, and about love. And at that point, once we make the connections between the experiences and back to our history, we're like, okay, now I get it. And for me, I had to accept that the way I was trying to control things to feel worthy was not the way to go about it. And that what I had felt controlled by or unworthy by in my childhood actually had nothing to do with me. Our wounded self makes tricky deals with ourselves. And oftentimes the tricky deals are that we will personalize things that have nothing to do with us. And there's a lot of other layers to that. That is a main one. So when we depersonalize, not necessarily to blame others, but to actually understand how people were just showing up as themselves as well and actually didn't have a concern. So they really weren't the enemy.
Hmm. They weren't the enemy. Oh, I love that. It's again all leading us to our path. I heard a speaker say just a few days ago that why do you care? It always works out for you anyway. Do what you're supposed to do, and whatever the universe or whatever's unfolding in your life, just know it's going to be used if to get you to your next level or to where you want to go. So embrace it. And bad stuff's gonna happen. You don't have control of that. You have control of how you respond to it. So one of the things I love about your work, Karen, is you use the words invitation instead of lessons. We heard you say that quite a bit. That alone is such a powerful shift. What does it mean to you? And why is that language so important for someone who's trying to heal? Because words, as I say, think, speak, to become. And so if you're thinking of it as a lesson, then somehow for me, it's like that does put me in a space where I'm going back to childhood. It's like I know in our culture, they use the words, I'm going to teach you a lesson today, and then you would get a spanking. I don't know if that happened to anyone. Or you'd be in trouble of some sort. So the word invitation is so much kind and gentler, but it's also so intentional. So tell us what that means to you.
Right. I love your example. I have a chapter in the book on conscious parenting. So that is our old style brick wall parenting. It's like, I'm going to teach you a lesson and, you're going to go to your room and you're grounded and you're going to think about what you did wrong. But here's the deal, why it's an invitation. Invitations come from our healthy self. So not our wounded self, but the healthy self that is a conscious parent, that is the good parent to ourselves, what we call backbone parenting, right? And the healthy self is giving us a choice. The healthy self, like the conscious parent, is helping us teach, learn decision making and learn about our worthiness. So there's no have tos, there's no shoulds, there's no brick wall. It really is about a choice. Like we get an invitation to a party or an event. We have the choice to open the invitation or not. We have the choice to go to the event or not. So the healthy self just will show us some pieces within the painful event that, can show up with some curiosity to invite us to think about what is happening and why and what we want to do about it. So it's an invitation to wake up, but it's always a choice. And it isn't meant to be punishing in the sense that, if we don't get it right, there's something wrong with us. It just means we weren't ready. And, getting ready and showing up in a way that gives us that choice to decide, I didn't have to wake up when my ex-husband left. But there was something that I became deeply curious about. What is going on? Why am I continually found to be in a place where I am so alone?
Exactly.
And I didn't have to. There's no have tos. It's a free world. Some people wake up earlier. Some people wake up later in their life. And honestly, some people never wake up. And it's a tragedy.
True.
So it's a choice. And we will feel better if we feel like we've made the choice rather than it was imposed on us.
Exactly. I love
That's
that.
the power. Yeah.
Yes. Taking that power back. And so for me, that's what makes for us to resonate as powerful beings that we are, is being in a place where we are able to see where we're needing to heal, where we're needing to grow, and taking control of it more so to speak instead of lending it to someone else or lending it to life. And you're a therapist, the external locus of control is one of the ways, and I talk about it a lot in mindset shifting, that it's once you're coming into that growth mindset, it is, how can I? It's, okay, here I am now. I used to be there, but here I am now. Here's what life is giving. Here's the information I'm receiving, whether it's through a tragic experience, whether it's through a just a like maybe even a loss of a job, whatever it is. Now you get to say is let that information come, and it's an invitation. I'm so going to embed that into my own vocabulary and obviously cite you over and over again. Let's talk about the yellow paint, about your struggles with control and self-worth a little bit more, and the pressure of perfection. Because listen, you're not saying anything, Karen, that I'm a stranger to. I have struggled with having, and most people be like, self-worth for you. I don't see that, but it's happened, and it's an area that I work on. But it comes from the way it shows up is in that perfectionism. And you talk about that in the book. What gave you the courage to tell that truth openly? You shared some of it already. And what has it been most surprising and rewarding parts of you doing that, being open and vulnerable?
Great. Well, thank you for that. Yeah, a reader told me recently that me sharing my own story in the book made all the difference.
Yes.
And sometimes, professionals and other people, it's sometimes tricky to be vulnerable. Only when we reclaim who we really are meant to be and reclaim our full worthiness can we be vulnerable. Because in essence, we're saying, I recognize I am not perfect and I am still good enough. I am good enough, although imperfect. So the vulnerability was a very conscious decision I made in the book. And I think it really is resonating with the readers. Part of my journey was those internalized core wounds around control and worthiness. The control part came from being parented by brick wall parents. Funny enough, we were just talking about that. But it felt like I was being controlled too harshly, that I was rendered kind of powerless in choices and opinions I had and ideas I had. So I internalized a loss of control. And at the same time, I internalized a core wound of worthiness. That came from the fact that I had two older brothers who were 2 years apart from each other, but 5 and 7 years older than I was. And so I felt separate. I felt like the third wheel. I felt left out. And unfortunately, as a child, I interpreted that as there was something wrong with me, because if I could have been a better person, then maybe I would have been included more. And I wasn't. So when I internalized loss of control and unworthiness, and then some of us will ride the aggressive side of the wound, while others will ride more of the passive side. And there's a lot of determinants that go into that, but I rode the aggressive side. So I over control other people, and I would act out negatively and overtly if I felt like I was unworthy again in another situation. And so
Yes.
that kept repeating itself until I was on that sidewalk. So the biggest issue that I said earlier was around personalization. So it turned out that my parents were just old school parents, loved me. They were dedicated, but they could just be a little too harsh and rigid and strict. And
Yes.
the fact that my brothers didn't want to play with me or include me in their play had nothing to do with whether I was the good enough person or not. This was back in the 70s. Gender stereotypes were real. And so boys will be boys, girls will be girls. And the age gap mattered. So it had more to do with, 1970s parenting, age gap, and gender gap rather than me being a powerless, unworthy person.
Right.
But
Right.
but a lot of us will take that unworthiness and have to prove something to ourselves or other people. And in that proving is where perfectionism can become a bit of a beast. And of course, it's not attainable. So we will set ourselves up, we will sabotage ourselves every time we try to reach for perfectionism. And if we're not waking up, all that tells us is that, again, we're not worthy because we didn't attain that perfection.
So, Karen, one of the things and one of the themes in your book, Yellow Paint, is healing motherhood. And of course, we were able to glean a lot of mindset shifts from that because that's where we're always looking for. So for Flip the Script, we want to talk a little bit more where you walk us through moments when everything had to change. And you did introduce us to that moment outside the driveway, your daughter's taking off and, going to this camp with your husband. And that's something that you're usually a part of. So I want to ask you, when it comes to the disruption of your own mindset and beliefs, one way that you would say was your biggest flip the script moments? I know you shared that one, but can you kind of walk us through a little bit if you want to, or maybe you have another one that you encountered? Um, what was that moment that was so defining for you, or another moment that was so defining for you that had you flip the way you think and thought about life in general? If you can walk us through your thought process of how you came out of it.
Right. So another great example, an earlier invitation that I talk about in my book was when I got sick. And the title of the chapter is The Autoimmune Gift.
Ooh.
I
Yeah.
see a lot of clients with autoimmune illness of a variety of kinds, right? A dysregulated immune system and all of the culprits and pieces that go into that, usually over a chronic long period of time.
Yeah.
And how we're managing our stress is part of that, whether it's the cortisol, whether it's adrenal fatigue, sleep management, running at high anxiety, absorbing metals, eating the wrong foods that's, dysregulating our digestive system, all these different culprits, right? And so for me, if we just slice off those core wounds that I was talking about earlier around control and unworthiness and riding the aggressive side of that wound, I searching for worthiness through perfection, right? So that means I will overdo, overwork, oversay it, overstate it, work too hard, do too much. And a lot of us will ride that side of the wound. We're desperately trying to find our worthiness, who we are, how we can discover we're good enough. And we keep chasing it. We keep chasing perfectionism. I was talking to somebody about this last night. Perfectionism is never attainable, right? We're on a train to perfectionism. And we think we finally got it. Oh my God, we made that perfect. Guess what? Get off the train. There's another train leaving.
Yeah.
There's no catching it, right? So for me, before I woke up, before my yellow paint, and what a lot of people will do will be to chase that perfectionism. And for me, that led to burnout in my career at that time. That overlapped with a couple of other things that were happening in my career with vicarious trauma. But this was the invitation where my body said, stop. It had nothing to do with a relationship with another person. It had everything to do with my relationship with myself.
Yes.
And if I couldn't wake up to earlier invitations that I was overdoing and some of the milder consequences to that, my body and a lot of other people's body will say, okay, you know what? You're not going to stop. We're going to stop it for you. And I ended up being diagnosed with chronic fatigue syndrome and fibromyalgia. And that meant that I couldn't exercise, couldn't parent the way I wanted to, had to stop my career for several years, couldn't socialize. And it was that fight that I was in with myself. But my body said, game over, Karen. If you're not going to stop, we're going to stop you for you. And I ended up, to use your word, developing the mindset because I was starting to grow. I didn't do the full growth at that point. I had more to learn, but the kind of the moderate level of learning I did was less is more, or what I call surrender without defeat. Accepting my limits, knowing that if I continued to overdo, I would lose. That the winning came from understanding and accepting my limits and working with what my body was telling me. And that more was not more, that more was less. So the surrender without defeat that I teach clients is about accepting the limits, kind of surrendering without losing. And actually accepting is the win. And that was the only way I could get better. And it took a long time. A lot of people don't recover from chronic fatigue. But I figured out some of the secret recipe within that. And it was the mindset from my healthy self that said, listen, you can keep overdoing and you're never going to get back to work. And you're never going to sleep again. And you're never going to play tennis again. All the things that I would enjoy doing. So less is more. We use radical acceptance, that DBT method, that helps us understand that we are imperfect and good enough, and that less is more.
Oh, imperfect, good enough, and less is more. So deep. And Karen, my own ACEs and personal trauma that I've gone through, and some, of course, would be the interpretation of that now because it's almost like you re-traumatize yourself. I ended up being ill for a long time and then finally finding out that I had Hashimoto's disease, another autoimmune disease. Surprise, 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 surprise.
There you go. Surprised, not surprised.
Yeah, right. Or not. But this is where I love the conversation too, for someone listening. I was having this conversation with my mother just a couple of days ago about me managing this autoimmune disease the last, I think now we're at 10 years of diagnosis. But when I didn't have the diagnosis, I didn't know what was going on. That diagnosis, my invitation.
That's right.
Live differently. And a lot of people's like, yes, the doctor gave me all these health ways and things to do. And guess what? They first tried to throw all kinds of medicine because I have, arthritis to go with it. You got menstrual issues. You got all these other parts of you start breaking down because one autoimmune disease leads to another one. And so for me, it was like, okay, first of all, I'm not taking all these drugs. This is not going to be my life. I was like, 34 or 35 whenever I got finally diagnosed with it. It was a relief, but then it was like, how do I move on? They're like, in a year, you wouldn't be able to walk properly. You might need a cane, all this doom and gloom stuff. And so I had to change habits, lifestyle habits. But that wasn't working enough, Karen. And that's where what you said is so pivotal. And I said this to my mom, because there's other people that I know and family members that I know that are suffering with the same disease, but our lifestyles very different. I am still very high energy, high pace, high production, living my purpose fully. And I know I need to rest when I need to rest. And I know that there might be a period, maybe a week, where I don't lift weights. I just walk, for my exercise. I have my diet. But I figured out how to work and still be very productive. But I would say most of it, Karen, came from the way I think. And you allured to that a little bit. I would love for you to say something. And I say this, and I'm going to be a little bit, it might seem biased, but I'm not. But a lot of women will suffer an autoimmune disease based on their trauma. That percentage is way higher. And this is statistically, scientifically proven than men would. Can you speak to this woman right now on how you might say, as a therapist, what steps can she take if she has an autoimmune disease, how she might approach healing as the main tool, healing her emotion, her mindset, to be able to doing that internal work and then allowing your body to take the guide, of course, from the doctors. But how would you talk her? What would you say to her? I mean, of course, you discovered it, but what would you say? Pretty much, what would you say to Karen when she situated?
I tell her,
say to her,
Stop. You're getting in your own way. You are literally making yourself sicker. You think that you're owning it. You think that more is more, and look at yourself. Look at what you're doing. But you're right. When I first went to, was a hematological pathologist. Well, that's a mouthful, but she was my specialist. And when I went to her clinic, and I was lucky to be there, the waiting room was filled with type A women. And you're right. The stats here in Canada are the same, that more type A women, history of trauma, will be having a higher, preponderance towards autoimmunity and dysregulated immune systems. Yeah. I'd still treat men who have MS and pieces like that. In Canada, we have the highest levels of MS, right? In the world, right? So the KG accountable therapy method walks us through a bit about the head and a little bit about the heart, right? The head is about the daily self-care routines, working within your limits, protecting your sleep. And there's 3 different methods of sleep that I look at, understanding what your food intolerances are, understanding what having positive, healthy relationships and having that, making your world as big as you can, so that your problems are feel smaller, and the exercise. And I had to, and a lot of people with autoimmunity have to figure out that secret target of how to stretch or move your body to discharge stress will not be too much or overtax your system where there's post-exertion fatigue. So the first piece is daily self-care. The second piece has to do with what you were saying a few minutes ago about thinking. And my clients will do a 5-minute cognitive behavioral therapy track every day, because every day there will be things that we don't want, like, or expect. And some of those unwanted events will overlap with our deeper core wounds, which, whether it's control or worthiness. And that's what will form a trigger, because as smart people, we can figure ourselves out. But if we're in a trigger reaction, it will get a whole lot messier. I developed the change program. So we use the acronym CHANGE, and that gives us daily practice to get out of our own way and correct our thinking. Whether we have to unstink the stink, whether we have to reduce blame and shame, whether we have to stop future worrying or past regretting, whether we have to make the general specific. But time zone jumping, generalized, over personalizing, blaming, self-criticism, all of these pieces, until we think differently, we won't feel differently. And if we don't feel differently, we won't do differently. So to do differently, we have to think differently. There are emotional regulation techniques like radical acceptance and other pieces of mindfulness that are so important to notice how you're living, not just living, but notice how you're living. And then finally, we do the deeper healing, which is about emotionally focused therapy to go back and reframe and redefine our histories, to correct the incorrect narratives so that we can be free, truly free to be who we always were. But when we absorb those incorrect narratives from our histories, we're carrying something that is really just helping us sabotage ourselves further. So that's the head and the heart, and that's part of the KG accountable therapy method that does many things, but it does help the person suffering from autoimmunity to have daily routines, ways of thinking differently, ways of regulating emotions, and ways of recovering and redefining our past. That is the recipe I know that combined helps people on many different levels, but can help the autoimmune sufferer to actually hear what the gift is within the illness. What is the universe trying to tell them? And it's very common to understand that the gift oftentimes with autoimmunity and for women are that more is not more. And where is that coming from? And what do you need to shift so that you're living in a different way?
Oh, I love it. Oh, I'm all up in your stuff. I love it. You laid it out for us. And it's like, I could see it working. I could see it working. I was like, where was Karen a few years ago in my journey?
Yeah, I know.
And this resource that you're bringing to the world is obviously what we need. And I know that you're going to continue to outrageously. I know there's so many people who are going to be trained by you to apply these methods to create the change and reach further and wide. Let's talk a little bit about people being stuck some more, because that's pretty much what this conversation is about, right? Some people spend years in therapy, though, Karen, but still feel paralyzed. Why do you believe therapy can be ineffective, and what's missing in some of the process? Now, you're not one that's saying therapy is bad. Obviously, you're a therapist. We believe in this. I believe in this. But there's something missing a lot of times that people still feel paralyzed, even though they're in therapy and sometimes for years and years.
Well, I there's a lot of different pieces to that, but in my opinion, the main piece, therapeutic training is about being non-judgmental, creating a safe space for clients. And I think that a lot of therapists are afraid to be dramatically honest with their clients. And whether it was my bold personality or what I knew worked for me, an old mentor of mine said, Karen, you can say anything from a place of love. And when we were down in Los Angeles, we released the book at the Oscars. And I was talking to an artist about what was in the book. And he said, Karen, you know what you're talking about? You need to call this interrupting with love. And I'm like, that's perfect. That's a perfect way of saying it. And I let new clients know, listen, I may cut you off. I may interrupt you, but it's because you are spinning in a way that I don't think therapy will help if I just sit and watch. Old school psychotherapy was about that, where clients would attend therapy for a couple of times a week over a long period of time. And that corrective experience of being in a non-judgmental place was helpful. But the world changed. So I am much more direct. I am much more structured. And yes, I do find a way to interrupt with love, because people come to me because they want change. So it's no longer, I think, about sitting beside the client observing. I think it is about interrupting with love. I think the artist got it right, because it's like, okay, let me tell you what I'm hearing, and let me tell you what I think about it, and let me offer you a tool or strategy so that it doesn't continue. And people will say that is a breath of fresh air, or they'll say you nailed it. Even in the first meeting with a client, at the end of that first hour, I offer a very specific formulation that explains why somebody got caught where they did and how and what to do about it. So it's a very active process. That's where I think therapy is more effective. But if people somebody said they can treat therapy like a confessional, where I'm just going to go and, confess my sins of what I'm doing wrong or what other people in my life are doing wrong, but nothing changes. We will feel good for a couple of hours, maybe, like we got things off our chest, but nothing changed. So we need to be able to understand, and therapy needs to be very specific about what they're hearing or what is being said and what does it mean. But most of all, where is that going to land? Because if I don't know what I'm doing differently, yes, the wounded self comes out of the corner and says, here, we're going to take it over for you. And unfortunately, as much as the wounded self comes from a real life, experience, it will get in our way and make those tricky deals. And we will repeat exactly what we're trying to change. So I think the most reason therapy could be ineffective is that the process isn't earnest enough, isn't honest enough, isn't direct enough. But other times people are just not ready. I mean, I went to therapy a couple of times before I woke up, and well-meaning therapists who were super nice and great listeners, but in my opinion, didn't offer the structure that I needed or the directness that I needed. but I was also probably not ready to wake up. It's weird. We need a very big consequence, to have it stand right in front of us, to get in our own face and say, this is not working. And there's a reason we don't wake up on the first invitation or the second. I had 7. Some people have 5. Some people have 10. But it's where we actually see the negative consequence and we are so upset about it that we decide we want to do something about it.
Absolutely. It's so I remember us talking before about the invitation will come. It's not that they don't show up. I think we agreed that it changes structure and impact. And sometimes, like you said, it's not big enough. But when it does, when we're ready to accept it, it's there. And so is it self-preserving? But at my age, and everybody's like, don't act like you're old. I'm almost 45 and I'm good. I'm comfortable. So you got, when the invitation pops up, I'm like, where do I go? Where are we going? Am I taking the train, the bus, a plane? Because honey, I do not want to delay time on being stuck if I don't have to. But granted, sometimes you're just not ready.
That's right.
Yeah, I would say,
we easily revert back to what's familiar, right? Change is hard, and we will easily revert back to what we know versus what we don't know, even when it's not working for us, right? Until the negative consequence is so big. And even then, some people still don't wake up. But if you have a big negative consequence and you have some interruption with love, it invites the wake up. And like most of my clients, they take it and they learn a different way to live. And that's really what it's all about. Because you're right, time is precious. We want to get out there. There's a whole life waiting for us. I always say, I think I said that somewhere in the book, like our healthy self is waiting for us the whole time. He or she's got all these goodies for us, but it's like we don't see it. It's like the healthy gut. We don't hear the gut feelings or thoughts, or if we do, we don't trust it. But when we get out of our own way, we can live the life that's been waiting for us the whole time.
Oh my goodness. That is so in our face, but filled with compassion and possibility all at the same time. And that's
you got it.
Right? Nothing beats when you're being compassionately confronted with the tools you need to pivot into the possibilities that is waiting for you. Love it. Oh my goodness. Time goes by so quickly when you're unfolding and I would say healing. So many levels to healing. I hope my invitation to our guests is not to think that, oh yeah, I did the healing work. Oops. It's a process, and be gentle with yourself. You don't know what you know until you know, and you won't know until you won't know until you get the invitation, right?
That's right. That's right.
So in our last segment, Karen, Mindset Bites to Go, it is where we offer, or you actually offer, I get to step away from the microphone, a mindset that is short and sharply insightful, 90 to 120 seconds that you leave with us as if it was your last time to speak to the world. What would you say to us that you would want to remain with us and really ignite shift? It's all you.
Okay. More than anything, what I want you to know is that your suffering has some meaning to it. That there is ways of thinking about where your suffering is coming from. And it won't always be clear and evident. But once we understand the common theme of why we keep coming back to the same place, are you pushing people away? Are you getting sick? Are you overdoing? Are you underachieving? Are you getting headaches? Are people leaving you? Are you in financial distress? So many different possibilities. Trust me, this is coming from an authentic place. Somewhere in your life, somebody hurt you, disappointed you, abandoned you, and you internalize something in that overwhelmed state at the time that you made something about yourself that wasn't about you. or you learned a way to cope, either passively, passive aggressively, or aggressively, as a way to survive that initial difficult negative experience. And once we develop that way of coping, we will take that further into our life. And how we survived those moments and how we generalize how we cope will eventually not work for us. It may have worked for us back then, but it no longer works for us. And these negative experiences you keep finding are somehow a representation of that. Trust me, there's a way to understand all of that. There's a way to gain clarity, and more than anything, there are tools and strategies that you can do every single day to get you to the better life that you deserve.
So powerful. So powerful. The better life that you deserve. And guess what? We know that you have been awaiting creating that life of abundance and peace and joy. And of course, that looks differently for each of us. Absolutely, absolutely. Karen, we know that we're going to have all the links. And of course, this book, we want you to tell us what is your favorite way to connect with us and grab a copy of Yellow Paint. I also know that you're working on the audiobook, which is going to be fantastic. Tell us all about that.
We are, yeah. So you can find my private practice at www.karenrsw.com. Everything about the book is at KarenGoslinSpeaks.com. Our books are on all of the Amazon platforms, paperback, hard copy, and Kindle. And yes, we are wrapping up production of the audiobook this Friday and launching it at the Emmys in Los Angeles in September. So the audiobook will be available. We just won the Golden Quill Award for the book. And by the end of the year, we'll be rolling out Yellow Paint e-therapy programs and downloadable workbooks. So it just keeps getting bigger and bigger.
Oh my goodness. Congratulations, Karen. And I am here for all of it. Disruptors, you heard it. She is doing remarkable things with her message. She has turned her pain into purpose, not just for herself, but for the masses. This is so profound. And for me, groundbreaking. Really, it is. Yellow Paint is. I want you all to do us a favor. If you're watching this episode or you're listening to it on podcast, I would love to see a comment wherever you hear this, and reach out to Karen, find her on her social media and let her know that her work has transpired a shift and a change, a healing change in your life today. Just let us know that one thing that you took away from this and grab the book. Let's go away together. I'm almost certain that for MM360, Mindset Mastery 360, we'll be using this book as one of our books that we will read as a group and study and mastermind over. And maybe have Karen come through and do a class with us. Just bless us with an hour of our time because she is a very busy, hardworking, impactful woman. Karen, thank you so much again for your transparency, your wisdom, and for coloring the path of healing Yellow Paint, which is all about fun. Yeah.
Thank you so much.
Yes.
I would love to come back to do a class. That would be a great idea.
Absolutely. We're going to put that together on our Mindset Mentor Matchup program. We'll definitely have you and Disruptors. We're going to make sure you know ahead of time when that's happening so that you all can plug in from around the globe as well. To our listeners out there, this conversation again was a gift, a reminder that healing doesn't require perfection. It requires presence, honesty, and courage. And to our community, keep leaning into your invitations, keep choosing courage, and as always, keep mastering your mindset to think, speak, do, become. I'm Dr. Alisa, your number one mindset disruptor, and my co-host today, Ms. Karen Goslin, saying all the best and keep on healing. We'll see you next time. Bye now.
Thank you again.